guys. We are here with the lovely Liz Gale, the author, the TikTok extraordinaire. Didn't your second TikTok just hit 1 million views?
It sure did. I have a little delay with you chatting. I'm going to turn on my headphones.
Gotcha. Is that better?
I don't know. But we can talk while I do it. Sorry.
Cool. No, you're good. I'm always just making sure it's good.
Yeah.
I'm a little under the weather, so I'm sorry if my voice cracks. I have a little cold or something going on, but I could not miss this at all because this is such a good book and you're such an awesome person and I loved your book. So
Thank you.
You were my travel companion. I know I told you that, but I'm telling everybody else. When I traveled and I was flying, this is what I read. I read it flying to California and then flying home. I literally finished it right when we were landing, coming home. And I was like, perfect timing. It was perfect. The whole thing. So it was really good. It was about a 5-hour flight. So I didn't read it the whole time, obviously, because when they bring out the snacks and the drinks, I didn't want to spill anything. I didn't want to ruin the book because I was like, I have to finish this, obviously, for the book club. So, and V is not here like on camera with us. She's a little under the weather as well. And this week has been pretty intense. And the protest that she was able to go to was also pretty intense. And she's just taken some time to kind of, decompress and feel everything. And, we prioritize mental health. And so this is just an example of us, knowing when we need to take a break and rest a little extra and all that good stuff. So it'll be Liz and I. But it's going to be so much fun. And I see Goldie's here with us. So that's awesome. So what should we start with? Should we start with like the overall, what made you want to write the book? Like what was the final thing, like the final push, if you will, or the final, like, I'm doing it? Because I know you said you'd written this off and on for years.
Yeah, this particular project, I had a crazy idea to do it about 5 years ago, and I just didn't think about it anymore. I'm still hearing myself in my headphones. I feel like I have to go out and come back in or something. Can I do that? Will you hold the phone down for a second?
Yeah, okay. I'm starting some stuff. And it's so nice to see everyone's here. We got Marilyn, I got Goldie, we have Poet. Thank you guys for being here. We have Trevanon, Leaving Scientology. Thanks for saying it sounds good. We can never tell sometimes when we first start if the sound is good or not. And we are not professionals, just guys, know that. We're not super professional, but we are doing our best. But yeah, I'm so glad that you guys are here with us. I hope you guys have read your book. If you guys have questions, put a question or a Q in the comments and we will talk about it, go over it. But we are talking about this and I'm wearing a green shirt today to honor and represent the beautiful book that Liz Gale wrote. And it's a nice green background. So we're going to rock it. We're going to have all the questions answered, hopefully, comments and chats about it. Someone's asking where are the foster kitties. They're actually having their playtime. So they are in my bathroom. They kind of can only be in there because they have some funky stuff going on with their skin. So they can't be on any carpeted area. So they're locked up, but they're playing. They have their open space to play. So they're hanging and napping and eating and playing. Welcome back, Liz.
Hi.
Oh, sounds so much better.
There we go. I think we're good.
Good? Okay. You sound better.
Sorry about that. I don't know. We were chatting backstage and there was no issue.
There was no issue.
We go live and all of a sudden I'm hearing myself talk. That was so stressful. I'm back. Yeah. It's really
You're
me
back.
now.
You're back. It's me. I'm back.
I was like devoid of personality there for 4 entire minutes, but it's me now.
We're here. We're back with the author, the TikTok extraordinaire, Liz Gale.
My goodness. Yes.
Always got to give all the kudos. And I love that you're still killing it. Like still, because you've been doing so good on TikTok it's been a couple years, right? I don't know when you even
almost 2 years. It's so fun over there. I know it's like talking about somebody's ex while you're on YouTube talking about TikTok, but
no, it's a different vibe.
It's a very different vibe. My brain works in short little snippets, which I think is reflected in my book. So the long form is a little trickier for me.
Yeah, but it's fun because you can get just that little thing that you need and you're like, oh, and it's like, perfect. It's perfect amount.
Little dopamine hit.
Yeah. Don't we need it? Don't we all need it?
Yeah.
A little bit, please.
Yeah.
I mean, I like TikTok too. Don't get me wrong. I joined during a lockdown, probably
Yeah.
like so many did, because I was like, I just need to laugh at something, and life is too stressful, you know. So that was my little happiness. That was my little serotonin, like dopamine, my little happiness there. So that was good.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
we have people saying that they love your TikTok. So I love
Oh,
that.
thank
I always tell
you.
people check out Liz. And what is your handle or your username, I should say?
Same as here. It's at Liz_Gale_Gale. So Liz Gale Gale. If you search me on Google though, Liz Gale Scientology, you'll find me very easily on all fronts. Which
Awesome.
please do spy on me.
Not just Osa can spy on her, guys.
That's right.
Let's give them a run for their money. I love that people know that your hair is amazing, because I think the same thing. Like,
Thank you. I
no,
appreciate that.
I just love it. So cool
Thank
beans.
you.
So,
Thank
okay, back to the book, because that is why we're here. I loved this book. I thought it was so user friendly, and I'm not a person that reads. I'm not good at sitting still. I'm just not. I just move and I'm just fidgety and all that. So I love audio books because I can put it on in the car and then I don't feel like I'm reading, even though I'm like listening. I learn better that way.
Mhm.
But I was like, no, I have to read this. And it was so easy. And I was really happy about that, because I've started other books and trailed off and never come back just because I don't have the time. So this was so user friendly and so engaging. Like the way it was written was like, left me wanting more, if that makes sense. Like, I got it, I'm engaged, but I would just kept wanting to hear more and to know more. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And also normalizing some of, like, I guess, how we grew up and certain things or tones or things that were just said and done around the home life, you know, that were
Right.
strange for others, but for us were probably normal, even though it's
Right.
not normal. So that was kind of cool, because I'm like, you know, it makes me feel a little less odd, like a little less of a weirdo. Not that we're not a weirdo, because we are the weirdos in this story. Don't forget it.
Can't help you with that one. No.
Yeah, we are still the weirdos. Don't worry.
That's
But
good.
but it was good. It was such a good
Thank
read,
you.
and it kept me company in a really, like, kind of a sad, you know, bittersweet time, because I was flying out for a funeral for a friend, or a memorial service. And so I was sitting there reading this, and I was kind of like, I kind of flashed it around a little bit just to see if the stewardess would like see or say anything or ask any questions, but they were all so cute and just like trying to get on, because there's no like straight through flights. Everything was like halfway on one flight, halfway on another. So they were just trying to get our drinks and snacks and cleaned us up real quick, which I loved. But it was perfect because I could jump in it and be so into the world of you growing up and feel like I was you, like, you know, like I'm reading a journal, or I'm like your friend and I see this stuff happening, or I know this stuff happening. So that was really nice.
That's such great feedback for me, because when I did sit down to write it, I really did want it to feel like I was just having a conversation with a friend and just kind of telling them, like, over a drink or maybe over something
Right.
else, about just stories. Um, and as well as it being accessible, there's so many really weird concepts in Scientology, and it's kind of hard to like put them in English in a like
Right.
easy to understand way. Even
Mhm.
speaking, I don't think I can do it as well. So I'm
It's
a
true.
writer. But that fills my heart to hear, especially coming, I think, from another second generation Scientologist. Of course,
Mhm.
I tried to do us all, proud. And that was important to me too. So yeah.
Oh, you did so good. So, so good.
Thank you.
And we have a question.
Uh-oh.
And I'm here. Do
Okay.
you hear me? Do you
Yeah,
know
you're good.
anything about getting your book in the Netherlands? I can't order it now.
Actually, I do have some good news. So on my end, it's as quick as clicking a button. I just needed to get a couple of things. The UK was one in particular I was kind of nervous about, but I was able to connect very briefly with a lawyer, and I feel really good about moving forward. So actually, this next coming week, I was going to have a 500 books party online, because I have sold 500 books. Can you believe that? Yay.
So exciting.
I'm so stoked.
Woohoo.
And I will also do it then. That will be part of our celebration. I will make them available at that time to all of everybody else. So the audiobook will still take a little bit, but thank you for asking that, Selma. So soon, next week. I'll keep you posted.
That is really soon. Awesome. I'm happy to hear that because I know so many people had asked in the beginning when it was first coming out. It was even hard to find it on Amazon for a hot second. I mean,
I know.
It was just hard to search it. I think because it's new, right?
I think it took, I knew because I had posted it. I kind of changed at the last minute that launch moment. But I was like stalking it. So I knew and announced when it was live long before Amazon had indexed it. Yeah. So
awesome. Yeah. I mean, it took me a second, but once I did, I just was like, order. And then I would share the link that I was able to get because I think that was part of it because we were looking up your name and all that.
Right.
And yeah. But it was awesome. And it came quicker than I thought. I think it took 4 or 5 days to get to me. I think it depends on where you live too and how long it takes to get to you.
It does.
Some people got it quick.
They print it somewhere, and however far away you are from where they print it, it's however long it takes.
Yeah. So we're going to put up a few comments. The tone was really casual. Reading it seemed like we were just chilling, passing a J, and you were telling a story.
Thank you so much, Poet, because that is literally the vibe that I was going for. I have read so many ex-Scientology books, and I really loved all of them. I've gotten something from every single one of them. And so, for me, it's like, where do I fit into the picture? Who am I? How does my voice matter? And funny thing is, somebody said, just be yourself. And I rolled with that.
And it worked out so well.
I think so.
It worked out really well. All right. I love that people are all saying the same thing. I agree. It's a very easy read. And yes, it totally feels like I'm sitting and listening to a friend having an intimate conversation. That's how I felt too.
Crystal, that's such wonderful. That's so great to hear.
Yeah.
That's so great to hear.
I think you did an amazing job. And I was like, it's like any one of these things, we could like have a whole book about that thing because there's so much. There's so much. So you did a good job of giving like a bit of everything and explaining that because it is hard to kind of like correlate and English and regular people's language to have stuff make sense. So you did a really good job, which I loved. I have to say, I read the foreword, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Open it up. And like the disclaimer. And I was like, okay. And then I opened the book. Do this. I don't know if it'll show. Just that I dedicate this book to my inner child. Taking care of you has been an honor. And I started crying. And I was like, not even the first page.
Gotcha, B. Gotcha.
I literally was like, shit, Liz. I literally was like, damn it, you got me. But I was like, it's so true. It's true, right? Truth.
Yeah. Well, and as a writer, like, and then there is an acknowledgement section at the end of the book where I physically, I name a lot of people. But there's something that, like, if you have a passion, there's something that keeps you going back to it against all odds. Like I would wake up really early and not just this, but just writing in general, just like, before my kids wake up in those like stolen moments.
Precious
and
time.
just keeping at it. Yeah. And keeping at it. And that was for we healed a little bit in that book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that because I sat there and I thought, I'm like, this is why people might just say, why don't you just get over it? Like you're an adult, you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, you're in your whatever it is. And it's like, but that stuff still lives in you and you still remember it. Your brain remembers it. Your heart remembers it. It's part of who we are now. So now we have to learn to live with that. And and explain it because it takes time, doesn't it? Like you got to go through, if you go through something, then you kind of have a healing period. Then you might have, it takes different time for everybody, but it's not right away that you can look back on it and reflect really clearly. Right.
So it's a luxury, right? Like I honestly didn't even know if I lived this long. So, getting into my 4th decade in life and just being like, screw it. I'm going to do these things. It is a blessing. Yeah. And a luxury. And so I'm taking advantage of it.
Yeah, as you should be. Because I mean, nothing's guaranteed, right?
Right.
And we're kind of defying the odds by growing up getting out, staying out, and
Yep.
making a life for ourselves. Even if we're not rich and famous and whatever, we're
Right.
still paying our own bills. We still have our own
Yeah.
place to live. We're not.
Mhm.
I don't even want to say we're not flipping burgers because I don't even think that's like such a thing that's bad. That's a
I've
job.
flipped
So
yeah, I've
so
flipped.
who
But
cares?
the thing is that I've earned a life for myself
Mhm.
where I can be who I am. And it doesn't
Right.
matter, you know, what kind of car, what kind of house or any like that's the life that I wanted.
Right. Right. I just wanted normalcy is what I wanted, like stability and
Oh yeah,
normalcy, and to not have to
stability.
feel like relationships were, hot and cold, depending on if you
Mhm.
chose to do a Scientology thing or not. And of course, I rebelled against it. So for me, it was like,
Cold.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
like, well, you're kind of
Right.
a handful. Yeah, I am. And I also don't like your weird shit. So you can have it, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So I do love that you said, I'm going to read just a few little excerpts
Please
because
do.
some of them are amazing. You said, there is no greater honor than being able to tell the truth about who I am and what I stand for today. I hope you'll come to see what I did, that those we love must be protected at all costs. May this book inspire you to tell the truth about your own life, no matter how scary it feels. I promise it is worth it. And it is. It's so, so,
Aw.
so worth it. I love this. I love that you're so personal in a way that it's like, oh, that's my best friend. I've known her for, like it feels like you are
Mhm.
talking to someone that you're just having a casual conversation. And I love that because it makes it more real and it humanizes us and our experiences, which is important. I think people like to sometimes dramatize stuff, like it's very dramatic, and Scientology can feel very strange to people that don't know it because it's like, well, the sci-fi religion and da da da, and it's true, but that wasn't necessarily what it was growing up.
Right.
Was it for you?
No.
Okay. It wasn't really for me either. Like, I don't feel like I got that portion of it until I was like older, like hearing the South Park stuff about Xenu and all that.
Right.
Like, I didn't hear those jokes necessarily until I was an older teenage, maybe early 20s, like something in there. Maybe.
Yeah. I think I
Maybe.
was a teenager, but for a long time I was insulated from anything like that.
Yeah. Because you went to what, Delphi, pretty much your whole.
Pretty much. Yeah. The Delphi is a big boarding school up on a hill. It's in an old is monastery, I think. It was built by Catholic monks, I believe. And there's actually a couple abbeys around here and stuff too. Really cool old architecture,
Cool.
but it's up on a big hill on 800 acres. And so they, there's no TV up there or negative news in theta. But
Yeah.
it's a bit like a Catholic school though, in the sense that sometimes things are really like tight, and then once you break free, you just like really bust free. You just like go a little wild.
Go a little feral.
Yeah, feral. That's the word.
Get a little wild. I love it. I
Yeah,
love it. And
yeah.
so when you were at Delphi, did you live there? You lived on campus, right?
Yes, I lived on campus. So the school year was like 9 months, and so you'd live there the whole time. You would go home for about 2.5 weeks at the Christmas break. You would go home for about 2 weeks at the spring break, and you would go home for summer unless you signed up to also go for summer school, which a lot of people did because summer school was like when they do the fun stuff.
Oh. So
So
kids would want to stay there because that was more or less their life.
yeah,
Because you
and
were there.
also the summer program. Here's the thing, I don't live very far from Delphi right now, and, I have children in this community, and, they're both in different schools because 'cause they're different ages, and I don't know anybody really who accesses Delphi's resources. They have a beautiful campus, they try to get local people for summer, and I don't think they do very well. I don't know.
I mean, I kind of think that's not a bad thing, to be honest.
Well, I agree. It's sometimes I have dreams about like, what if we ex-Scientologists like raised the funds and bought it and turned it into this whole like artsy community, and then my mind keeps going forward, and then pretty soon I've created a cult. So I back away slowly.
You're like, hold on.
Yeah,
Well, I think a lot of
exactly.
the people that start those type of things, they want community.
Yeah,
And so you can see that, like, you can kind of see how it could start and trickle
Yeah.
down bad.
definitely.
Kind of. It's so strange that Delphine, Oregon it's like a boarding school, because to Delphine, California, you didn't live there. You just went there. It was a long day. It was like 7 or 8 a.m. to like 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. I'm sorry. So it was a long day, but it was just Monday through Friday from what I remember. I didn't get the chance, but I wanted to try to stop by the old Delphi campus when I was in California, and I took your book and I wanted to take a picture in front of it, but I ran out of time. So yeah, so it's on the bucket list, but you should go do that. That would be really cool.
I should. That's funny. I did drive by there not that long ago. I didn't think about putting my book up.
Oh yeah, and take a
to it.
picture. That would be perfect, because like part of your childhood is spent there. So I think it would be awesome. Okay, so we have a few questions I'm going to pop up because I'm going to forget to. Someone asked question. Sorry if it's already been asked. Audiobook in your voice. Help us single moms and I out.
Well, yes, it will be, but I have not made it yet. I will get there. I think in a couple of weeks. Hopefully by Christmas, I will have something that can be purchased, downloaded, listened to.
Now, are you going to record it in your own voice?
Yes, absolutely. I think most memoirs you should do in your own voice, right?
Yeah.
Like autobiographies. Yeah.
I think so too. I actually like those better because I feel like you get what was the most impactful because you're the one reading it. So it's really cool. Is that a lot of work to do?
Well, technologically, it's just a little bit out of the scope of my like knowledge base right now.
Yeah, because I have no clue.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can kind of hide in a closet and use this setup and what I need to have. But I'll get there.
That's really cool.
If anybody out there knows how to do it and feels like helping a sister out, hit me up.
Right.
I'd be a terrible cult leader. I'm just like,
sorry.
The thing. I very rarely even give advice to my friends. Like, and when I do, I have this whole slew of just like, hey, I, for one, don't ever know what the fuck I'm talking about. Oh, excuse me. I don't know what the F I'm talking about. Number two, you never have to do anything that I say. It's always a choice. I like go through all these things and then I'll be like, I think you should do this. But it takes me a long time. I'd be a terrible cult leader because I just tell everybody to do whatever they wanted.
I know. Free think, guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really don't care. Yeah. Don't burn the place down.
Don't hurt yourself or others, hopefully.
Yeah. It gets nuanced though, you know. So
I know. There's so much gray area in life. I mean,
yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, whatever works. So Liz Ferris, hey Liz, how are you? She says, what did you do during the summer?
I was home usually in the summers. Home being wherever my parents lived at the time. When I left to go to Delphi for the first time, I was 8, turning 9, and my parents lived in Utah. And then I didn't last the whole year that year because it was very traumatic for me. And then I went back the next year, tried again. They were like, oh, you're too young. And I have a 9-year-old son now. And I'll tell you right now, 8 is pretty young. Pretty young. Yes. I mean, they can do it, but they'll end up like me. So beware.
Do you feel like your kids are younger than what you were at that age? Like, do they seem like more immature or more sheltered? My kids are. That's what I'm asking.
I mean, yeah. I also, my youngest, you know, he's a normal child, and therefore normal, whatever that means. He's great, but he's, you know, a typically developing child of that age. And he's had zero of the expectations that I put on him. I really try to keep the expectations age appropriate. You know, he does a lot of chores. He helps. He has a lot of responsibilities, but he's not waking himself up every morning, cleaning his dorm room, getting himself to breakfast, choosing healthy foods, getting to course on time, you know, doing his classes till 5 p.m., doing a work crew for an hour every day, doing his own laundry, sourcing all of his own other snacks and materials. He's not doing that stuff, you know? He's got it's a little bit less.
He has his free time to do whatever he wants, right?
He does. I mean, and maybe I'm sounding like I'm babying him. I don't mean to do that either. It's just the expectations when you're all by yourself in an organization at 8 are very different than when you're in a home and you have a family.
who takes care of and does, yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
know.
it's totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, acceptance is the first step towards healing. I agree, poet. I agree. Wise words from a wise man.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And there was another question down here I'm going to get to. If I can, oh, here we go. There was another question from Liz. I love it. What was it like to be with your family compared to Delphi? Oh, what a great question.
Good and nice and exciting, except typically I didn't have a ton of friends when I was home for the summer, right? I had because I wasn't there all year to build relationships with the kids in my neighborhood or whatever. So a lot of the times I felt kind of like an outsider. When we were in communities that had more Scientologists, like when we moved to LA, I had sort of a built-in friend group that welcomed me, and we went to Six Flags like the day after I moved there. But other places like Utah and North Carolina, there was not that. So it was good to be home, relaxing. I could like eat as much as I wanted. I could get the foods that I wanted. We had real butter. If you didn't know, I had a lot of food concerns. I was overly concerned with the food. But I would keep to myself a lot. So,
yeah. A little more shy, a little more, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, another question we have. Is Delphi a nonprofit school or do COS parents pay for it?
Okay, so Delphi, the Delphian, it's called Delphian now, I believe, which I want to follow that rabbit hole because I think that they had to change their name. And usually when somebody changes their name, there's a reason for that. So I'm curious what that reason is, but I don't know. So Delphian is a bona fide boarding school, private school in Oregon. And because it is a private school, they follow different rules than a public school or public education. I don't know if they're technically a nonprofit. I think most schools are nonprofits, but I don't know their tax filing. But I know that they are like an accredited school in Oregon. And so not all of their students are Scientologists. I don't know what the ratio is. I know that they have a lot of people that come from the other side of the Pacific Ocean, right? Because we're like here on the West Coast. And so that brings us really close to some Asian countries, like Japan's pretty close. And there are a lot of families there that want their children to be educated in America to some degree. So that's like a top pick for that demographic. But it costs a lot of money. Last time I was there was like, I was told it was about $47,000 a year.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That is a lot. Okay, another question. If you could go back, what would you say to yourself? Liz?
Oh my gosh,
Ferris.
Liz, I love this question because I've been having so many, like, I don't know what to call them other than like come to Jesus moments, like these full circle moments. A boy that I had a really big crush on for almost the entire time I was at Delphi. He was my first romantic kiss. He was I was pretty fixated on this guy. I had some new hormones and I was really into this guy. And he bought my book, right? Like now in the future,
Oh,
he was like, "Hey, I
wow.
bought your book." Like, and we had
Aw.
kind of like not connected, like we don't talk or whatever, but we're, social media, friends of friends, so he was just put it on there.
Mhm.
And I thought if I could go back in time and tell that little girl, he's going to buy your book one day. I feel like it would have made a really big impact. Also, the guy who wrote essentially the Rolling Stone article about my brother bought my book and said it was really good. Yeah. And that, Mark Ebner, and that just was also a full circle moment for me. So I would go back in time and just tell myself, like, everyone's going to buy your book. Live your life, baby girl.
Yeah. Yeah. And be excited and proud. I know it's a weird upbringing that we come from. Strange to some, but you made it. You're alive. You're here and you're healthy and happy and sane relatively, right? Like, what's sane? But
Relatively.
Relative.
Jury's out on that.
Relatively. But what's normal too for people? It's just what's normal to them. Because
Right.
what was normal to us was probably bizarre for most everybody else. Because if you tell stories, they'll be like, what? What? That's not, no, no.
Well, yeah, and you know what I found about some stories?
Mm.
Because I picked and chose too what stories I put in this book. There are some stories that are actually so outlandish that people have a hard time believing them. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they're so ridiculous. And I feel that way when sometimes people come forward with abuse stories. And they're like, this happened to me. And it's like so egregious that your brain's just like, was it really? Yeah, that bad. And so I find that there is a tiny bit of like, I don't want to say toning down, but just trying to make it accessible and communicate it clearly so people aren't just like, whoa, that's crazy. Did I go somewhere?
Where are you?
Am I not right here?
Mm-mm. I can see you, but you're,
What?
I don't know. I didn't touch anything, but you popped off, but I could see you down there still. So I could hear you too.
That's so weird. I can't go in or out on my own.
That's, oh well.
All right.
You're here. I can still see you down there the whole time. So
Okay.
it's good. So we have another question.
Oh my goodness.
Hmm.
Liz. Well, I prefer sativa. However, the indicas are much shorter grow time. So I appreciate that.
Okay, so we have another question. Liz, did your brother open up at all to others about his own trauma? My brother sounds a lot like your brother who attempted unaliving himself. He is very intelligent and has a great memory.
Yeah, not a lot. We definitely talked a little bit before. There's a chapter in my book about how he came home and told me some top level secrets of Scientology that he had found out about. So he didn't talk about his trauma. No, he talked about his decision and like how weird it was how we were raised. But I still don't know everything that happened to him. No. I have been able to piece together a lot more things that happened in his early childhood before I was born. Obviously, he wouldn't be opening up to me at that time, but I'm like the cleanup. I'm like the replay crew over here. I'm always trying to find out.
I mean, but it's there's a lot of secretiveness, I think.
Yeah.
Because as you're trying to find out stuff, about your brother, I'm still trying to like figure out stuff about my mom too. Like there's just so much that I feel like they don't talk about or that you're not allowed to talk about for whatever reason. Or it's just not really acceptable to talk about, or they don't think that they should or can, So it's very important. I think it's such a personal journey, and I like that you're still doing it, that you're still wanting to know. I feel like that's really a good way to honor, your brother and his legacy and all that good stuff. So I appreciate that.
Me too.
Another question. You mentioned in the book that the author of that article wouldn't talk to you because, quote, it was too painful. I'm hoping because he bought the book that you've been able to have a convo with him.
It's actually a different person. So, there was a Boston Herald series of articles that my brother was mentioned in just a few short days before he unalived himself. So that author would have been, that writer journalist is named Joseph Malia, I want to say. And he would have spoken to my brother numerous times in the last week of his life. And that's who I wanted to speak to, who I tracked down some guy who was in fellowship with him when he was like 25. And I found a picture and I just messaged all the people in this picture and was like, do you have any contact with this guy you went to fellowship with? And he said, I do. And he tried to hook us up and he was very kind about it. But the journalist, refused to, he said, it's too painful. But he had mentioned something about some health thing. So I don't even know if that man's alive. The other journalist, Mark Ebner, he works on all kinds of things to this day and is very active and has always been very open book with me. He helped me track down everybody he talked to in his article. That was written after my brother died, if that helps clarify
Yeah.
that. I don't want anybody to like
There's more than
think
one
that of Mark.
person.
Yeah, he's always been super open and helpful and amazing.
That's
And
good.
kind about my mother as well. And
That's
that's important to me.
That's important. I would say that's very important because it's hard to understand what happened and also not demonize somebody.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is.
Oh, V says, Liz, you are so brave for talking about all this. It's a big undertaking.
Thanks,
I
V.
agree.
If anybody knows how hard it is, I know it's you guys. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a strange world out there. And the more we learn, I think the stranger it gets.
You are too, Missy. We all are. I mean, they don't realize, I think Scientology doesn't realize what they created.
I know.
Oops, oopsie doodle.
Oops, they created a monster.
Whoops.
Or a bunch of monsters. I mean,
little army.
It is a little army. And, I think us knowing that we're the lucky ones that grew up, made it out, were able to decompress and deprogram ourselves. And I mean, I think it'll be a forever journey to do that, to unlearn stuff. Because there's so many little threads of things that maybe we don't even think are Scientology.
Right.
There are. I mean, even Liz, when you were talking about some of the Dianetics stuff, I am not as familiar with that. And it really was like, oh shit, that is making so much more sense, how the mom is always the problem. Like that's what kind of basically boils down to, is how they think, is the mother's always the problem. And it's so weird because there were so many things that I'd always be like, why is my mom saying this? Like, what is this? Like, why would you say this? Like, when I was a teenager, I was a handful. But she would be like, you never loved me. You always hated me from when you were a baby because you wouldn't take my breast milk, or like I wouldn't like breastfeed. And I was like, what? And I'm sitting here as a teenager and I would just laugh at it. I'm like, are you bringing up breastfeeding? Like, are you mad because I didn't want your, like, what? And it was such a weird thing because, we just would laugh at it because to us, it just seems bizarre because we don't know the context, So me and my siblings would always be like, what the heck? Because it's easy to just say, no, mom's being wild again, like whatever. Because, moms are always on their kids for everything, right? Now that we're moms, we see that. But that was something that really kind of had some light bulbs go off. And I was like, oh, that's really sad. That's how a lot of parents, like our parents, were conditioned to think that. And how much better could they have done parenting, and how much less stress could they have had on their plate without having that crap in their mind?
Right. Exactly. And that's so funny that you say that, because I don't think I was ready to like tackle those topics writing wise. I've been like, for years just learning, and I did go to school for child and family studies. So that's kind of, a lot of psychology, human development, I don't know. It's all been brewing, but I'm actually working on Confessions of an Ex-Scientologist Mom right now. And so that's
so excited.
In the same way, in the same light that I wrote this, I want to tackle some of those.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I thought should be talked about a little bit more, because so many of us grew up with strange circumstances and parenting philosophies that are so bizarre and so kind of opposite of healthy milestones growth and what you should be doing. And that was something I know we've talked, and it's always nice for me to talk with you because you're a mom too. Yeah. And I was the first one in my family to have kids and to get married. And so for me, it was very much, I had a lot of boundaries. I would not leave my kids alone with family members that were Scientologists. I didn't want them around people. Like if their house had all Scientology stuff, I would rather not be there because I didn't want my kids to even see that. And they still don't know a whole lot about Scientology, which is fine. They know that I don't like it. But it's such a weird in-depth thing that how do you explain all that to them,
Well, it's a lot. And I think by the time that you've explained it all, you've almost indoctrinated them.
That's my fear. Because if I say too much, then they're going to be like, is that how you're supposed to do it? And I just feel like some of the concepts are so damaging It's just so damaging that I would almost rather not tell them. Because do
There's
they need
yeah,
that?
there's definitely some. And you know, I think again that goes to the age appropriateness, I think, as
Mhm.
far as what a kid should know. You know, what kind of age that they need to know. I certainly don't want my children thinking about their mother's trauma. But again, now
Right.
that I have an older teen who's about to graduate from college, I mean, sorry, nope, high school. That was weird. Wow. He's about to go to college. Those conversations are obviously different than with a 9-year-old. So,
For sure.
yeah.
For sure. I know. It's just hard. I'm just like, I kind of don't. But then it also is such a ripple effect in the family because they don't have, like, some of us don't have grandparents for our kids
Right.
because of this, right?
Yeah.
Because of their extreme religious beliefs. And that's also a weird thing to talk to kids about,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
you don't want them to feel bad.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's so true. I mean, my older had a relationship with my parents, whereas my younger didn't really. My younger just every once in a while be like, "Oh, do you have parents? Where are they? Are they dead?
Mhm.
Like what's going on?" And I try to just say, "No, we made some choices. We both made some choices that we decided to go our separate paths."
Separate ways.
Yeah, and maybe if I have to elaborate, I'll say something along like I didn't feel like it that they were safe to be around. You
Yeah.
know, right now with the choices they were making. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean they can never be safe people. Um, it just means that, you know, with those choices that they were showing me they were making, it wasn't going to be a safe place for us.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. The older one, you know, it gets a little different.
Yeah.
But cults are a real thing that are prevalent. And the more I start to learn about coercion, I notice that it's not even really just cults. It's can
No.
be coercive relationships. It can
Mhm.
be, you know, jobs that end up taking advantage of you through manipulation tactics or um even advertising on television, you know, it's designed to go past your conscious mind to your subconscious to make you do something, to make you feel a desire or a need. And even in my mind, that's culty. So
Yeah.
I do think it's important that everybody, especially kids, learn the coercive tactics. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's
No.
there's nuances.
Yeah. A lot of nuances, a lot of gray areas, a lot of
Yeah,
choices
the
that we
gray
have to
zone.
make. Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Speaking of, V says, my dogs lost their grandma. Honestly, it sounds dumb, but she used to save them food and it make her happy to spoil them with steak and them too. Saddest things they do are steal joy. Yeah,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
agree. I
I
agree.
know, and you know that disconnection too, I haven't talked about this very much. I mean, you know Alicia anyway, but it's not done. It's the strangest thing. It recently happened again within,
Mm.
you know, some people close to me,
Mm.
and that person towed the line for like 25 years, just always, you know, never saying anything negative, always trying to be that Switzerland so that they weren't disconnected from. And you know, now these people are in their like late 40s and 50s and
Yeah.
disconnecting from each other after spending a lifetime together.
What's the point? Yeah.
Well, yeah,
It's
it
like,
just goes to show like there is no for some people, this isn't true for everybody. My family is strangely in. Like,
yeah,
really, really in.
like they're hardcore. Yeah.
Yeah, and hardcore in their own hearts. Like, some
Yeah.
people are in that they're just being bounced around the rules, bounced around the policies, and they don't really
Yeah.
wanna do it, but they're kinda doing it, and they don't wanna lose this or that, so they're,
Yeah.
and not even under the radar, just, like, maybe even actually being a Scientologist, doing those things. Um
Hmm.
And then there's people who are doing it and have really taken the policies to heart and activate the policies and act that way, not at all because anybody on the outside is telling them anymore, but because they already learned it and believe it. That's the people in my family that I've experienced.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, it just seems like a shame to find that out after 30 years. You know, it
Yeah.
would have been way better to just know early on and then just live your life. But hey,
Yeah. And save some heartache, maybe.
I would hope so. That's ultimately my ending. That's
I
the
just,
goal, I would
I don't know.
hope.
I guess it's it's bad either way, because either you don't know somebody that you could have loved and had a great relationship with outside of that,
Yeah.
or you toe the line for a while, which I know a lot of us do, and it's such a topic to have discussions on, because everyone feels differently.
Yeah, everybody do whatever you wanna do. I mean, I'm not here to say people should or shouldn't do something. It's
Yeah.
just, when you get to that point,
Yeah.
when you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and you can tell yourself you're not, and that's fine if you wanna play that game. It's all happening in your head. That's fine.
Yeah. Right.
But
It's how much are you willing to deal with it?
exactly, because
How many
it does
eggshells do you want to walk on?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just really it's weird to think you could keep walking on those eggshells and keep walking on them, and then, like, 30
Mhm.
years later, still have the same,
Yeah.
like, "Oops, you one time didn't walk on eggshells. Whoops.
It's
One time in 30
wild.
years, you're screwed up."
Isn't that the most bizarre thing about it all? It's
Yeah,
like, so you say one little thing, or so, like, not saying me, but someone could say one little thing, and that's
right,
it. And it's
right.
like,
And for some people, it's not even them saying anything, it's simply just being connected to somebody who is saying
mhm,
something.
mhm.
And
That's all,
that's
actually a lot of
also
times what's happening now with social media,
Yeah.
at least. Yeah.
Yeah, you're, like, literally losing I mean, I'm just gonna put this into an absurdity statement that is not a direct reflection of my family, so this is, like, a fictionalized, but, like, that would be like you having a brother
Mhm.
and him being a hardcore Scientologist, and for decades of your life just being like, "You're okay, it's fine. You do Scientology, I won't say anything. We're cool." And then one day when you're in your 50s, he's like, "So, you're friends with somebody on Facebook? I can't talk to you anymore. Our 50-year relationship is over. You either defriend that person on Facebook or we're done." And that's sounds like an exaggeration, but that's
That's
literally
literally what happens.
yeah,
That is actually,
names
like,
have been changed to
examples.
protect the innocent and the guilty.
Mhm. Isn't that the most bizarre thing? And I will
Yeah.
say, I think that this year has been a year of justice, and that Danny Masterson's,
Yes.
at least two of the victims got some justice, right?
Mhm.
I think that it's going to be very hard for people that have been towing the line to continue to toe the line,
I think so.
with that being such a public thing, and him getting the hardest sentence that he could. I
Yes,
just,
I agree.
how do you, like, justify that? And
Yeah.
it's been a long time in the coming. That case has been a long time in the coming. Just
Yes, and I hope it's the floodgate for a bunch of others, and there are many others in the works, and I
definitely.
think this was a sign, a very clear, like, you're not above reproach. Like, we're
Mhm.
on to you. Judges are on to you, jury members are on to you. That same crap that you thought you were gonna pull and did work for 70 years isn't gonna work anymore. And so, they've changed their tactics a little bit, but I do think it is going it's gonna come to a head. I agree because and here's where Scientology really messed up, and I think people overlook this, is that at its face, some of the most, prevalent concepts in Scientology are integrity, ethics, morality, communication, and having a clear conscience, and responsibility. And those granted, you get these weird, Scientology's examples and definitions, but those concepts, in a way, are instilled so deeply, so often, that I don't understand how someone can keep getting those messages and eventually not turn on them because of the Danny Mastersons or the Julian Schwartz or whatever you've seen with your own eyes, or the pervy uncle that keeps having access to the kids, whatever it is. How do they, the end of the road ends in standing up for what's right. So whatever that is for you,
Absolutely.
and you get pushed and pushed and pushed until the point where you can't even
You're
say
not
you're
gonna
a
do it.
Scient yeah, and
Yeah,
you can't even say
you're just
you're a
not gonna do
Scientologist
it.
anymore because everybody's like, "Oh, Danny Masterson, you're covering up for," So
Nope. Yep.
it's like a major thing in history. Like, we, I think, are really coming into a major historical moment for Scientology because there is this kind of line being drawn where there's enough of us on one side and enough on the other that you're gonna have to see where you're gonna fall. What side of history are you gonna be on?
I agree. I
I just
wholeheartedly
really
agree.
ranted about that.
No, I think it's honestly, it needs to be talked about more, because I think this has been a long time in the coming. And how many people have been talking for decades? I'm sure that those like people that have been doing it for far longer than we have.
Mhm.
You know, I hope that they see some justice in their lifetime. I hope that they can
Yeah.
see that. As weird as that might sound, I really do hope that they know that they helped lay the path for
Yeah.
others, you know,
Yeah.
and we're
Well,
just
and isn't it
contributing
yeah.
what we can.
Well, and isn't it a preset in the way to happiness of set a good example?
Yeah, I think it is.
I'm just saying at a face, like super basic, going back to like those little things that I really did. And I tell my kids to set a good example, my
Yeah.
oldest, especially, to the younger, set a good example, said it 1,000 times. Um, but that's what I want to do. I'm not saying that I'm setting a great example with my personality and I swear and all that, but like, I think that standing up for what you believe in, what you know to be true, and you can take risks. And I mean, for me, it was a huge risk to name my book Confessions of an Ex-Scientologist Pothead. Like,
Mhm.
that was risky for me. And I won't get into why. You can read my book and see how all those pieces kind of play around or whatever. But um, it's like taking that back, taking
Exactly.
that, oh, you wanted to call me
Owning
PCS
it.
and out ethics and all this stuff. Well, I'm
Oh,
taking it back.
exactly.
Um, And it feels really good. And I just, at the end of auditing sessions, they would always ask you, would you like others to achieve the goals? What is it? Achieve whatever you have. You have to say yes, because if you say no, you
You're
got to
gonna
go
be
redo the whole
back,
thing,
be back
right?
in there.
Right. Um, but I feel that way. I really do. I don't mean to tell other people like you're not healing fast enough. That's not at all. Or get out sooner. Or what are you doing? That's not what I mean. I kind of mean I'm like I'm in the pool and the water's good. And
Yeah.
we're splashing around and we're having a fun time. And I just
Yeah.
want you to jump
Yeah.
in. That's
Yeah.
the vibe I'm trying to give, even though sometimes I get a little worked up.
It's hard though. If you think about how much we've had to be quiet and how much we've had to suppress and
Yeah.
pretend and like living in two different lives, like the
Yeah.
Scientology portion. And then when I was mainly in public school, which is, what I really tried to stay in because that was safe for me. That
Right.
was for me what I wanted to be in and what I felt like without knowing like the words as a young kid, I felt like that was the safest thing for me. Scientology
Yeah.
never felt safe for me. It just didn't.
Hmm.
And kids are not really high priority in Scientology either. And I don't want to say that everybody was treated badly as a kid, but I think there's not as many people that go out of their way to be kind to kids necessarily because they're just so busy doing their course or whatever they're doing. And that was something that my late mom always had an issue with because she was a caretaker. And so she did not like that they would have the worst people taking care of the kids, like just people that were in trouble and you're in ethics trouble. So you're going to put them with kids. Does that sound smart to you? I mean,
Yeah, and from everything we've learned later, not only were they putting people in ethics trouble with children, there have been cases of they're specifically in trouble with children, and so
right.
that's why they're being assigned to children to
Which is so bizarre.
prove themselves or something. Yeah, it's really this very just naive, wishful thinking. The other thing I think to remember is that this whole time, Scientology and Scientologists have been rebuking mental health, right? So, all the developments, everything we've been learning out here on the outside about attachment and child development and mental health and, um, just the whole gambit, all that
Right.
is just not allowed in that culture. Like, we're not even saying it's not allowed in the church, it's not allowed in the culture. And so, you don't have a community that understands that,
Hmm.
children develop in a particular way and need certain things at certain times. They don't, it's all missing. It's like missing. And so I'm really fascinated by the Scientology culture.
Hmm.
There's the policy and there's the Sea Org and there's like the very rigid organizational structures. I wasn't really in that. So what really fascinates me is sort of the culture on the outside, how it plays out in the families, how it plays out in these homes that don't have a ethics officer waving their finger around at them like the other people do,
Hmm.
yet they still toe the line and they still create children that are indoctrinated and that they're essentially sacrificing by giving them up for the Sea Org or labor or school or whatever it is. And that fascinates me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they have a little more wiggle room to not do that because
They
they're on
Yes.
the outside, which, you know, they
Yeah.
have more options, I would say.
They do. And then those parents typically come from a diverse range of backgrounds, right? There could be
Definitely.
different cultures, internationally, like geographic cultures. There is different mindsets that people come. There's different socioeconomic demographics. And so, there are some Scientologists that had it a lot easier. There are some Scientologists that raised their children and did not force them to do Scientology, that had them go to other schools. Yeah. And then there are others that literally assigned them conditions at the dinner table about chores, and that's the same thing with Christianity, right? Or any religion that you're not living in, is that you kind of take it into your home. So for me, what's really interesting are all the common threads that go through all those homes, aside from all the differences. And that was what we would boil down to be Scientology culture.
So
Does that
many
make sense?
nuances. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does. It's different for everybody. And every parent, I think, parents differently. And to the degree that they apply and use Scientology within the home is so different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's funny though, because even the ones that don't do it, quote, as much, you still are doing a lot of things. Like there's still some just core, but like you said, there's just some core fundamental beliefs that they have. And, there's no such thing as a victim, and stop dramatizing, and like touch assist and weird stuff like that, which I was always like, don't fucking touch me. Like, no, that's the weirdest shit. Don't. Like, and I still probably to this day, if I hurt myself, I probably still am quiet, which is weird. Like, even if I hurt myself by myself, I'm like, and it's like, why?
Yeah.
Like, because it's certain things are so deeply ingrained in us.
Yeah. Well, and like all things that trick you, there's a little bit of truth, I mean, take the silent birth thing, for example. And I'm not defending, I'm not an apologist here, but I like the context of it, that in the 50s, they had this thing called twilight birth, where like they would knock you out and strap you down. You just wake up and you had a baby.
Okay.
They had doctors using the forceps. A lot of children were
Oh, wow.
damaged from that, just
Yeah,
like pretty brutal. And so the idea of a calm birthing environment was fairly
That's not bad.
revolutionary.
Yeah.
I mean, where I chose to have my oldest, this was almost 20 years ago, and they had rooms that were dim lights. And I mean, these kind of concepts, they've worked into modern day medicine now. Like, we don't have to be alternative. You can do whatever you want, but I don't know how to explain it. They're just like rejecting the man. And now 70 years later, the man is different than what you thought it was. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not making a lot of sense, but
I think we're learning more too. Like we're forever like evolution is a fun thing to watch. It's not a fun thing to live through, but I'm sure if you're like way on the other side, it's cool to look at. Like people that are going to look back at this time period in the next 50 to 100 years, they're going to be like, whoa, right? Because we can look back at 100 years ago and be like, holy moly, expansion, growth, and so much change. And it's hard to keep up with it all sometimes, but it is amazing. And it's a good thing, usually, as long as you're checking the work that is coming in, kind of thing. Like,
checks and balances are key, which Scientology has none of.
They don't. They're just like, it didn't happen. Be quiet.
Yeah.
And is anything ever really 100%? Like, is there any certainty in life? I'm kind of coming to the point to think that maybe nothing's 100% certain.
Yeah. And honestly, the more sure somebody is about things that I know we can't be sure about, like, I mean, you could be sure about things in the physical environment, and I'll trust you. Like, oh, you're sure about how to fix this car. Awesome. But when somebody comes around and they're like, I'm sure what happens to you after you're dead, I'm like, that's great for you. Good for you. But when they're so sure that I need to become sure about what they're sure about,
I don't need you to be selling me on it.
Yeah.
Right. Why? But that's how our parents were on so many things. They were trying to sell us on stuff. And I would always make the jokes. I would say, I don't make deals with the devil. That's what I would tell my parents. I was such a sweet kid. I'm like, I don't make deals with the devil. Sorry. And that was kind of laughed at. And I would also say, stop being a used car salesman. I am your kid. You don't need to sell me on this. And
Yeah.
if I don't want it, then you need to respect it. And when they didn't respect it, I'd be like, bye, I'm not talking to you. I was not the nicest. I will say, like, I had boundaries like a mofo.
You have to be.
But
It's like fight or flight, baby.
it is. And I was,
Yeah.
so I was a fighter then. And now
Me
I,
too.
I find that I'm like, can I just fawn and do nothing? Like, because, you know, you get so
Yeah.
to do it so long, it is a lot of work. And
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard when you have siblings or friends or whatever around and they're not saying anything and you're the only one saying anything, because I was the only one saying
Yep.
anything. And so it was just, I'm the trouble. Like, I'm the cause. I'm being bad. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I was a dramatizer. It was very degraded.
Right.
But we know that our parents think this stuff, and for them that's true. And that's what I used to have to say to my mom when she would say something like bizarro, that I was like, well, that's, you know, that's true for you, but it's not true for me.
Right.
And that was the only way that I could honestly have a conversation that I didn't end up yelling at her. Like, this is
Right.
not true. Like, you're saying it doesn't make it true, right? If I
Right.
say the sky is red or green or whatever, and you're looking
Yeah.
at it and it's blue, you know?
Well,
So
see, that's the thing, though. I think in that moment, if it is possible for two people to say, wow, we both really feel really strongly, like we both think we're absolutely right, and we have different ideas, and that's going to have to be okay for us. That
yeah,
moment is really powerful, and there can be so much okay, like just fine in that moment. I think it's tricky when you start having to be right, because in Scientology it's like if there's a policy and you don't agree with it, it's because you don't understand it, and
exactly.
you just need
Where's
to
your MU?
study. Yeah, you just need
Mhm.
to study it more. You just need to do this course or this thing, and then
Where's
at the end of all of
clear?
that, yeah, and at the end of all that, if you still don't, we'll give you the false purpose rundown,
Ooh,
which is literally thousands of dollars to sit one-on-one with a Scientology counselor over the e-meter, and they are trying to change your mind. Like they're trying, like, find
they
your
want to break you.
they want to break you. And I don't even know how to explain cognitively. One day I hope I can put it into psychological terms, like what actually happens in that closed room, because I don't totally get it. But it consists of asking the same questions over and over and over again until that person comes to a particular realization, which is, like you said, like breaking a person.
Yeah.
And we're talking for days on end. You could be doing this 8 hours a day. You're not done. You wake up in the morning, you go home, you sleep, you wake up in the morning, you do it 8 hours the next day. Then you do it again and again and again.
Sounds torturous.
It is, all until you actually really get that policy. You
Mhm.
really agree with it. And either you kind of pretend or you trick yourself,
I
or
was just going to say.
yeah, or there's something that actually can happen. And I know because it's happened to me, where you actually
You start to
just
believe it.
believe it.
Yeah. It's easier just to say you believe it to get out of there too. And I think it made it made some people really have a blurred line on being honest and truthful, because if you're
Yeah.
learning to lie to get out of the situation, like, I get it, I'm not upset, but is that going to then extend to the rest of your life? Like, are
Right.
you going to then use that? Because then that could be very manipulative in
Totally. Right.
future whatever endeavors, anything, everything, which is
Well,
really
then you're
is
lying. Then you start lying to any perceived pain. And like, guess what?
anything.
There's a lot of pain out there. That means if someone comes to you in a relationship and they're like, "Hey, we got a problem. We got to work out." You're just like,
Right.
that doesn't work either.
Yeah.
And it's
Mm.
funny. It's funny. Here's a funny story. Yeah. So in my book, I talk about how I knew that the reason that my family did not go into the Sea organization was that my father had done LSD in his earlier years. And there's a caveat that says you can't join the Sea Org if you have done that. So
Mhm.
even though my mom wanted to or whatever, and we couldn't because of that. And I always knew that in the back of my mind. So later when I was 14, I signed my billion-year contract, and my father had passed by then. My mother said, you can't go till you're 16. And so I love that for me, but I had about like a year and a half, it felt like a prison sentence, right? And I said, my life was going to be over. My next billion years. Like I had a billion-year prison sentence coming up at 14 years old.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and it was too much. I fractured. But I was resourceful, and I remembered that my father couldn't go in because of the LSD. Plus, it's all over the form, right? The other ones are PCP and angel dust. Neither one of those I knew anything about. If I could, but see how dangerous is that, right? A 14-year-old girl that just looks at this little checklist and goes, whatever those are, I'm going for it. Like I said earlier, I'm surprised I'm alive today. So I was resourceful and I did accomplish that goal and I did partake in that and I changed my life for the better, but it was obviously a very weird way to go about it. I got my LSD and I went for it. I was telling that story later and somebody said, yeah, there was a dad that actually told a bunch of us that just say, if they come around to recruit you, just say you did LSD and they'll leave you alone. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could have just said it. I could have just said it. I didn't even have to do it.
Because you were so honest. You were so honest. You're like, I have to actually do it because I'm an honest person. That's so funny. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Whoops.
I also love hearing how many people actually did LSD just for that reason. I think this is amazing. What a movement, doing drugs to say LSD work.
Well, and that really is one of my confessions in my book is like my fear of Scientology basically pushed me into that. And it is I think that is dangerous and scary. Like I can laugh about it to this day. I'm 40. I've, come through my, I won't say I've come over my ups and downs, but that particular up and down I'm over. But especially with, the fentanyl crisis today, like that's not good.
It's scary. It's very scary.
It's really scary.
It's very dangerous now.
And we both know people who have gone to very extreme lengths to get out of the Sea Org, to get out of Scientology, because there's only a few things they take really seriously. And one of those is attempting to take your own life. Another one is being psychotic, like having a psychosis, like a psychotic breakdown. And those aren't really easy to fake because they really will push you and try to get how real it is, So you really I know many people who drink like cleaning supplies to get out of the Sea organization, not to get like really dark and awful here. But if your only options and solutions to get out are something like I did, looking at a list of substances that are just not allowed or knowing you have to, threaten to unalive yourself, that's not good enough. Like if those are the only ways that you can get out, that's not okay. There has to be another way. And those ways are still happening. So that's why I highlight it. I laugh about it and I'm kind of like, oh, good, I'm alive today. But the point of it really is, as you know, that like children are still in the situation. People are still signing billion-year contracts. They're still looking at that exact same list and thinking, oh, maybe one of those is how I can get out.
Maybe that's my get out of the Sea Org free card, which is so sad.
Yeah. And sometimes it really does take, not all personalities are like mine, but like I am a go big or go home. It'll take me kind of a long time to make a decision. But then when I make that decision,
you're doing it.
I do it. And so there's some things that like change everything. But until you make the decision, it's not. And I just wish there was like more positive decisions that the kids in that situation could make to change the situation without having to go down the really dark path that I know people have gone down. You personally know people have gone down.
Yep. So, I think most everybody that we know that's out knows people. And that's the sad part. Like most of us know a handful, if not more.
Yes, exactly. And not to mention, even outside of Scientology, teens are, teens have a hard time. Young adults are having like the world's a crazy place. And so let's not make it any worse for them.
Yeah. Now you're strapping them with all this mental fatigue and all this, like trying to figure out how do you get out of something that you really don't have a choice in. Like you really don't have a choice, but you want to think that you do, but you don't. I mean, a lot of kids don't. I will say a lot of kids do not. And how many kids I've talked to that thought that running away was an option too, like unaliving themselves, harming themselves,
Yep.
or running away.
Yeah. And some of the strongest people I know were ones that when they did make that choice really didn't have anything, you know? I do encourage people, if you are under the radar, if you are planning on leaving, you can set up a soft landing for yourself, depending on how deep, you're in. The Aftermath Foundation could potentially help you. Friends and family could potentially help you. The SPTV community could potentially help you. Food stamps, temporary assistance for needy families. There's so many things that can help catch you. So you don't have to prove your strength by being one of the ones that lost everything and rebuilt. Those of us who had, and to certain degrees more than others, have a lot of tools for you. So
I agree. And everybody in the community is really helpful and is happy to talk to and chat and, send you in the right direction, which is a really nice thing.
Yeah.
Just that the community itself is so loving and understanding without even you didn't have to know all the background details. We're just like, yeah, we're here for you. You just let us know. Like the world is awaiting,
Yeah.
Come
And
on out.
it's one, and to help somebody through that kind of hard part, like providing a safe place or some of the essentials is not, I guess I'll just say, is like, you can ask for help. It's okay for you to ask for help. No one is thinking, if you're asking for help, that we're like, oh, this person wants like a brand new mansion and a car. That's not what we're thinking. We understand. So if you need help, please ask for help.
It's very true. If you need help, like even toiletries, toilet paper, paper towels, a place to live, whatever, like however big, however small, whatever it is, there's definitely a lot of people that will rally behind you. And I know that because we do that behind the scenes. So
exactly.
We don't need to make a video about it, but there's a lot of people that do it. So.
Yeah. So don't let that stop anybody, please.
Exactly. I have a question for you that I've had starred, and it's a good one. I love the chapter on cannabis. I'd love to hear you talk about it. I moved here to Washington in 2016 and have been on a journey myself. Getting my hands in the soil is also a therapeutic must.
Indeed. Yes, cannabis has been a beautiful thing for my life on so many levels. Of course, when I first got into the cannabis, it was mostly just for recreational. I really wanted to change the way that I felt. And as you know, if you read the chapter, there's like a loophole in Scientology. And I kind of explain it in the book about how that worked for me to not get me excommunicated. But I was really, really, really surprised by cannabis. And I don't know how to explain it other than I really looked up to it. And a seed is so tiny, right? Like a cannabis seed is, maybe you've had a hemp seed, you've eaten a hemp seed before. I'm trying to think, like smaller, about a kernel of corn or a little bit smaller. And it just blows my mind that everything it needs to know is in there. And that's true for all seeds, of course. But I don't know, cannabis just really blew me away that way. And that every part of the plant is useful. Of course, just like tomatoes, you would have certain tomatoes bred for, for sauce because they've got more meat and less seeds, or you might have some that are cherry tomatoes. There's a lot of different variety in the cannabis. But the stem, the stalk, I don't know. I just self-identify with it in a way where I want to be like that. I want to be resourceful. I want to be helpful. I want all my parts to be useful. And I want, not to mention, cannabis is also, like, as far as flowers go, some of the most pungent, and the bees love it. And I don't know, I could go on and on. Obviously, I'll stop my little love poem for cannabis here, but it's been a pleasure and an honor to witness the start of a tiny seed growing in to this, out of nowhere, this stalk that is strong and fibrous, and medicine that can help our minds, and seeds that we can eat to nourish our body. It's just like, what else is like that? And that and and that makes me feel like there's something good. That makes me feel like there's something good, and I might not even see it, right? Because it's just this big right now.
Mm-hmm.
But soon it could be taller than me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop because I get super gushy, but thank you for asking about cannabis.
Oh, Liz, you talking about your trauma gives permission to others to unpack their own trauma.
I hope so. I hope so. And I kind of hope maybe we'll see if I got there, but I kind of hope that my brazen pothead announcement of myself really encourages other people to some of the things that they said about you that were wrong aren't wrong. Some of the things that you were told about yourself might
Yeah.
not be true. So you get to define yourself. And I like that.
Yeah. I like that too. We're in charge now. Question: how much did it feel like a Truman Show to be dragged into the middle of the public and Scientology? Yeah.
Yeah. I think especially at the time when my brother passed away, that was very Truman Show-esque. Also learning about it because I was very sheltered at the time and I didn't really know everything and I was kind of scared to ask about things. And then later I read my brother's note from when he unalived himself for the first time on Wikipedia.
Hmm.
So very Truman Show. And that's like I say, I'm the replay crew on my own life. I'm like literally going back to like talk to people who were there to figure stuff out.
Isn't that so wild?
It's very wild.
It's like the little things that we learn and then we keep learning. It's like truth is stranger than fiction. It's just strange.
Yeah.
Strange.
Well, and do if you're following on here on Degraded Daughters, do follow me on my channel because I've actually been going on some deep rabbit. We're gonna do some fun stuff over there. We're gonna dive in.
Yep, diving in. So make sure you like and subscribe. Another question. Mark Headley talked about no longer having nightmares after having written his book, and think Mike Rinder had the same experience. Did you have something similar?
Nope.
You still have nightmares, or did you never have nightmares?
I do. Not as often as I used to, but yeah. Maybe book number 2.
I don't know. I think the fact that you did the first one and it's doing so well, like, is it still like number 1?
No, I mean book number 2.
No, I know, but is it still in the number 1 position?
No, I think it's
it
like
was for a while.
It was, but no. Which is fine. Buy my book, and then maybe it will be again if you haven't read it yet.
I mean, it's a great book. I was like asking people, I'm like, do you want to order it for you? I'll order it for you. Over here panhandling it. I'm like, hey, do you want one? Do you want one? Do you get one?
Well, I felt that way when Jenna Miscavige wrote her book. I wanted everybody to read it because I was just like, hey, this, and I even told a bunch of distant people, they were like, what was it like? And I'm like, honestly, if you want to know what it's like, here's a book. But that was like the one book of its kind,
It was. It's an Audible that I loved because it's in her voice.
Oh, cool. I didn't know she did that.
And that was one that I did within maybe a year ago or so. And I really, really liked it. And I thought, well, good for her, I mean, what a badass, to be honest.
Yeah.
It is the first of it was the first. I mean, I think it still is.
Yeah, there's well, there's Bad Cadet, there's my book, there's Jenna's book, and then there's another guy wrote a book who's a second, Nathan Rich, called Scythe to Lepo.
Yeah, I have not read that one.
Yeah.
But he's an interesting
There's not very many. I mean, there's a lot of other books, of course. I'm not trying to caveat anybody, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, second generation stuff is very intense.
Yeah. Well, and Jenna and I were both born in New Hampshire in the same little community that my parents had started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're like a year and a half apart, and her family went to the Sea Org and mine went to Florida and hers went to the Sea Org. Again, there's that LSD. It was like literally the only reason. So the whole time I was reading Jenna's book about the Cadet Org and all this stuff, I remember thinking like that would have been me. And hit really close to home. I was really proud of her. I am proud of her.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still a great book. If you guys haven't read it, I encourage you to read it.
Yeah.
Because it's a good one. I'm going to read a few more things from your book that I thought were really amazing. And I know you talked about this one. I thought that it was really funny, though, that you say that when you came into this world as a third-generation Scientologist, by your first breath, you were considered a lifetime member of the organization. Though your parents didn't pay the $2,000 to make it official until your 4th birthday. Along with teddy bears and toys, I received my International Association of Scientologists lifetime membership. Proof I was a card-carrying member. By then, I'd already received hundreds of hours of spiritual counseling, including Scientology's own form of past life regression. At 4?
Yeah, because, and that's funny. This is a good example. Someone posted that passage and they were like, she must have made a typo. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And it was interesting to me because it's like, wow, what I said about hundreds of hours, like they just didn't understand how that could be. So they were just like, oh, she made a typo in her own book about her own life in the first page. No, it's true because my mother was a very highly trained auditor. And so not even counting in utero, I mean, we did all kinds, we drew pictures. Like before I could read and write, I was getting auditing, like past life recall. What is that one? What's the one where you remember all this stuff? Self something. I can't remember now. Self-analysis.
Self-analysis, yeah.
Self-analysis, we did that. And of course, when you're young, very young, and you're drawing pictures and you're talking about stuff, pretty much anything that's outside of the norm is accounted to a past life, right? Like if you're doing a session and a 2-year-old comes up and she's like drawing, it's like mommy and daddy, and then like here's this other person. It's like, oh well, that's probably a real person from, before or whatever. Yeah, so it's not a typo. By the time and the other thing is the e-meter, which is their like tool that you hold you hold the cans. When you buy it, there's a bunch of cans because you have different size hands. And so in that, they all stacked together. There were these do you remember the little itty bitty teeny tiny little cans?
I remember seeing them. I never was audited. I didn't do it.
Lucky you.
Thank
Those
goodness.
teeny tiny little cans. I remember like
Are those for kids?
Yes. I remember like waiting until my hand was like big enough, and we're talking, I don't even have anything around here.
Like a toilet paper roll, like that little,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like a hair curler then.
Yes, like a hair curler.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I might be exaggerating. I was very young. I don't know how big my hands were, but they were tiny. Because I remember you have to have contact because it's an electric current, a pulse is going through your body, and that's reading on the meter. So there's all these things that they do at the beginning, as you know, where you like squeeze the cans and you're setting the cans. So not only do you have to be able to hold the cans and have a contact, which, you have to be pretty still, is hard for a 4-year-old. So,
yeah,
I wasn't doing like hours and hours and hours at that time. I was mostly getting used to it, getting totally indoctrinated into it, as well as drawing pictures and talking about things.
Do you feel now as an adult, do you feel like that's, I don't know, I don't want to say abusive, but like it's totally not appropriate, but like it's very early indoctrination at the very best.
Yeah.
It's invasive.
It is definitely invasive. However, I kind of akin it to the same as like, yeah, inappropriate might be a good word. I don't think that my mother was being abusive to me by doing that to me. I think she was maintaining a very friendly environment at that time. She was, and I think her intention was to like help me assimilate into my new life and my new body. And like, so I don't remember it as being a very negative thing. I do remember it as being a constant thing and something that we were always going to like continue doing and do more of and grow up with. And then once I started getting auditing the quote, like real meaty Scientology, like the security check, say at 8 years old, that my mother did in our home office, that I would consider borderline abusive, though everybody else in the world, because I have like 1 million views, or not even, I have like several 100,000 views on that one, and people are like, that's abuse. And I'm still kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of an apologist. I'm working on it.
It's hard because I know that was not the intention, but it is hard to look at it now and be like, didn't you feel like you were pushing this and like shoving it down our throats? But I do understand what you're saying, because other religions also do stuff and go to church and, they get baptized or whatever, you know what I mean? So they do their own religious stuff too, even as kids, because they want to introduce their kids to what they think is the right thing or the right way.
Right.
It's just, yeah.
And you can't really do auditing or like participate in it without like the facts of how the mind works and how the spirit relates to the body. Like you're defining all those things in order to be in that chair. And I think that's one thing that people tend to overlook, because you don't just like tiptoe in. It's a whole science. They call it a science. And so it's like all or nothing kind of thing.
Yeah. I got a question for you. Good morning, ladies. Just wondering when the book will be available to order on your website, Liz. I am dying up here in Canada waiting to read it.
Thank you, Kat Jack. Well, I'm going to tell you this week I will make everything ready. I'm going to have a little party online, and I will have autographed books on my website, but I will also be releasing and opening up sales to Canada and the UK, and I think everywhere in the world. And then I am hoping one day to get it also translated into Spanish, at least. There are lots of other languages that would be great, but here in the United States, it goes like English, Spanish are two of our biggest ones. So
that would be so cool. I'm going to show a few more things. We got Kelly Copter. Hey, Kelly. Hi, beautiful. So happy to have you in here. So cool.
Yes.
And I'm going to put another one up. Support you both telling your truths. We appreciate that. It's a strange place to be. I never thought I'd be doing this. Like, at least, I don't know, did you? Like this?
I thought I was an SP when I was younger, but no. I mean, yes and no. Yes and no. I don't know. I don't know what I thought. I knew I was going to be trouble.
I was trouble too.
I knew I liked to talk, and I knew I liked to read. So that kind of manifested.
That goes hand in hand, yeah. That kind of did just manifest itself into the most perfect thing there is. Yeah, that's funny. Oh, hi, number 5, letter A.
Hi.
Hello, friends.
So glad you're here.
What a sweetheart.
Yeah,
we love our moderators. There's so many sweet people that have been helping us along the way, which is so strange, but like in a sweet way.
Yes. As a side note on that, if anybody does put a super chat on my channel and they say they want it to go directly to mods, I always try to honor that. I say try, I always honor it. I have so far. Nothing stopped me so far. I continue that trend.
You're like, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I got another question. Kelly Copter wants to know, Liz Gale, when will it be available in the UK? I think you might have answered this in the beginning.
Next week. I'll make some big announcements this week, but it should be coming so very soon.
That's exciting.
It is exciting. I hope, thank you everybody who waited, and I really hope that you enjoy it over there.
I think it's going to be really, really, really exciting. And I almost wonder if it's going to go #1 again, because more people have access to it.
That'd be good. I'm not sure if it's a different algorithm. Like if they count, I don't know how it all works.
You might be right.
I'm not sure. I'm learning.
You're the author here.
Ask me again next month, and then I'll know.
You're the author here, so
yeah, learning on the fly.
We're all learning on the fly, and I love it. I mean, we're showing up, and that's what we can do.
Yeah,
bringing our experiences to the table, and that's important. Okay, I'm going to read another bit of part of your book because I'm sorry I highlighted a lot.
I love it.
Is Scientology a cult? This was the first time I'd seen this word. I had no idea what it meant, but I knew I had to. What I knew what I had to do. According to L. Ron Hubbard's study method, a student may never pass over a word or symbol they don't understand. It's considered unethical. I love this. I love the contradictions in this. Like that's so juicy. Okay. I didn't want to be unethical, so I looked up cult in my student dictionary. Webster published in 1999. It defined a cult as a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. So perfect. Like that's just, I love that it's an action, and you're like reading and looking and learning and using Scientology to debunk Scientology. It's kind of great.
I always thought that was so weird because I'm like, that's what we are. We're like a relatively small group that the outside world doesn't get us. Yeah. But then, and that was in the What is Scientology book, which got put out in the early 90s and was a huge part of what made they were trying to push Scientology as a religion, like rewrite all that stuff about it being a self-help group and, blah, 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 and make it be a religion. And that was one of the questions in their own little book.
So that's so funny. It's
Yeah.
like they make their own, like their own questioners, their own people that don't believe their stuff.
I know. And I use that particular dictionary with that particular date because, the word cult the understanding has, kind of evolved since then. And now we have like a different framework. But back then, I didn't understand. And, really what it was coming down to was there was an organization, and I might get a couple of these names and dates wrong. So feel free to fact check me, everybody. But I think it was called the Cult Awareness Network. And they came out, I believe Steve Hassan maybe was part of it. I forget who. There was like a big name guy who was part of it. And they basically came out and said Scientology is a cult. And Scientology sued them into oblivion, bankrupted their company or their organization, and then purchased it and then issued Scientology a glowing review in their name. I hope I made that make sense and make that clear. So it's just very, very, and then they, of course, put that passage into that book to like make sure all the youngsters know. And you're supposed to memorize that. That was a catechism to memorize. So no, I'm not. Scientology is not a cult because we believe we're open. We talk about everything, blah, 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 blah.
Isn't it? It's just so like, what were they thinking?
Right. I know.
Right. And then we have a comment. The first inception was child Dianetics and a lot of reach and withdrawal.
Yes.
I think 'cause we were
By
talking
the way,
about cans and stuff earlier.
This is Dylan who has a new channel. So everybody should check his channel out. Yeah, it's in I know I saw Goldie put a link to it. Yeah. So child Dianetics, like when I was pregnant, my mom gave me a copy of that book. And I got rid of that one. And then I ended up getting another one because I kind of wanted to like figure things out. What was I raised by? But yeah, it's that. There are so many things in that, which I do consider Scientology processes, reach and withdraw, assists. There's a lot of Scientology that can be applied to very, very young children. So by the time you are 8 or 10, you know all the basic concepts and you're ready to just pick up the cans and go for it.
It's kind of wild. It almost doesn't leave a kid room to just be a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's I think, one of the saddest parts is in the culture is that if you have the idea that children are adults in little bodies, then you're not thinking about age-appropriate expectations. You would not expect a 4-year-old to solve a trigonometry problem, and you wouldn't punish them for not being able to do that. You wouldn't withhold basic necessities until they figured that out, because that makes zero sense. And there are some instances in Scientology that I believe are the equivalent of that and are messed up.
I agree. And they're very damaging to kids and their psyche and their mental and emotional well-being.
Indeed. So. And, the as we've increased our understanding over the past 70 years since Dianetics first and Scientology first started, the definitions of abuse and child abuse have changed, right? There is a concept of age appropriateness now in the definition of certain types of abuse, because it would be abusive, right, to withhold food until a small child finished a trigonometry project. If that was an older child and it was like a 15 minutes, like finish the project, then you get your food. Like we're just doing homework here. You know what I mean? There's different applications. And so unless you teach your people that and you just say they're adults in little bodies, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, truly asking for trouble, which we keep hearing about new lawsuits and new people coming out and new people understanding and asking questions because they're maybe at the beginning of the journey of, kind of peeling that nasty onion that is, that was our indoctrinated years of childhood.
Exactly.
So we have Kelly Copter said, I will be purchasing next week. I adore the book cover. It could be a poster. It could be. It could be. It's so cute. So good. So good. You did really good with this. And it was such a good, easy read. Like I said, you were my travel buddy. And I love that. I was texting you when I was traveling. I was like, I just want you to know you're keeping me company and you're my sanity right now. It's love. I love this. It's perfect.
Dear Lord, if I'm anybody's sanity, then we are all going down.
I'm a degraded daughter, so we're just showing up and
We're
trying
fine.
our best. We're
in the
good.
same lifeboat. We're good.
We're good. We're
fine.
just doing whatever we're doing. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read a little more because
Please
I
do.
love this book. Okay, so there is a word in Scientology for people like me, suppressive person, SP for short. Anyone who wants to destroy Scientology in any sense is considered a terrible, awful person, a person who doesn't want anyone to succeed or be happy. A suppressive person will attempt to ruin any form of social betterment. Their one true intention is to keep others down. Ex-members who speak out against the church are almost always given this title. This label ensures all current Scientologists will cut ties with them immediately. I just love that you said it and put it in such easy terms, because I think so many people on the outside don't realize, like, why aren't more people saying stuff? Like, have you ever heard someone say that? Or why did it take you so long? Or why didn't you say this when it was happening? It's like, you know, how much can we risk when we're kids and our caretakers believe in this and this is their ideology? You can't always risk everything like that. So I just thought you did a really, really good job of making it easy enough to understand for the outside world that might not have the background that we do. I mean, when did you learn about disconnection? Would you say, like, when you were, like, at what age do you think you kind of first knew that it existed?
Very young, because my original godparents were left Scientology. And so you know, some of the, like, people I grew up with, I guess you would say, and their children, and they weren't my godparents anymore. And so that was, I think, the first instance where I kind of, and I didn't really understand that till later. That happened around 4, but I guess it's just that very, very, very rudimentary concept of, oh, they didn't do this, so now they're out. Right? Like, they had to go because they didn't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. They went against this thing, and so we're now against them.
Yeah, so super, super young for sure. But see, my mom always worked for, like, Citizens Commission on Human Rights, and, like, I always understood there was a struggle. Like, I always knew that there was, like, a fight to be had, which is a huge part of a cult, because that ties you up with your energy and your time and keeps you fighting and us and them. I understand all that now. But as a child, I always knew there were enemies. And once you were an enemy, you were just a really, really, really bad person.
It's true.
Yeah. And that's the caveat, really. That's one of the mind loops, right? Because if you are against Scientology, inherently you're a bad person and it's saying you don't want any society to be bettered. So it's like, well, what if you work at a soup kitchen? What if you work at a clothing, that helps people? What if you do believe in social betterment and you just don't think Scientology is social betterment?
Exactly.
Doesn't matter. The minute you cross that line,
very cut and dry.
Yes.
There's no gray area there.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why so many families are affected in such intense ways. I mean,
yeah.
If your whole extended family is Scientologists or not, then they're walking on eggshells. Either everyone is in and you're all kind of, marching to the same drum, or like mine, my parents were the only ones that were in. And I think family members walked on eggshells.
Yep.
And would maybe make jokes. And as a kid, I didn't get them, but now I do. And I'm like, okay. But I'm also one of the only adults that now, as an adult, I'm like, who people will ask questions to, because I'm the only person that's been publicly not okay with it. And even growing up, I rebelled against it pretty rough. So I would always be like, Scientology. But it was laughed at because I was just a rowdy teen. But I was also like, no, this is not good in any way, shape, or form. It just feels invasive and very not okay. When something makes you feel icky, you don't need to be around that.
I know. Well, and it's interesting to me. Again, everything's so nuanced, but so my how do I explain this? My mom, my maternal family, it was my mother's grandmother that got us into Scientology, but she had a daughter before that. My mom and my uncle came after that, but she had a daughter before that. So she was 20. That daughter was 20 by the time my grandmother got in. So she then started her family. So that particular line did not get into Scientology. So I have some cousins and some, on that.
Mhm.
But I always thought it was so interesting how they just knew they couldn't talk bad about it because they would lose the relationships. But I would argue that if something is so dark and scary that you literally can't even voice your concern to a member of your family or a loved one, and I'm not even talking about an aggressive way. I'm just saying like
A conversation.
in the best way you possibly could. Yeah. Which not everybody in my family is good at. um,
Same.
It was just
Same.
really weird because I had to I defended my decision later to cut ties with my mother to this family, and some of the things that I told them had happened, I don't even think they believed me. Like
Oh.
I told some of the older ones, like, did you know that my mother, after my father died, she literally gave me up for adoption to this woman I'd never met before? I don't even know if that's in my book. And she was just like, no. And I remember she said, well, I live and let live. And I was like, you mean abuse and let abuse?
See, that's where I kind of think too, is like,
Yeah.
if you were on the playground and a kid was getting harmed, would you just be like, it's not my kid, it's not my issue? Like
Right.
someone who, like, honestly has no say so. Would you do
Right.
the same thing if an animal was being abused? They can't speak up
Right.
for themselves. Like, I don't know. And this is, I think, partly why a lot of us have turned into like animal advocates and like hardcore foster
Mhm.
mamas, because we understand what it's like to be the kid that needs help. But
Yeah,
no
that's why I
one
was
knows
drawn to
no one
early
wants to
childhood
fight.
education. Yeah,
Yeah.
because when I can have interactions, with children in like a professional setting where um I can just listen to them and they can just, have an idea and, open-ended questions of just like, oh, tell me more and this and that. I love that experience because um yeah, it's not like a closed answer question, it's just free. You're just free to like have an idea and just say an idea. And I
And
just love
nothing's
that.
right or wrong. It just is. Like,
Yeah,
it's just
and it
cool.
doesn't mean that you were somebody in a past life, and it doesn't mean that you pulled this in, and it doesn't mean, this and all these other things. It really just I don't know, it's great. Again, that is such a luxury that I didn't know until later. I didn't appreciate, and I think I'm even just now learning to appreciate it more. So Lord help you all because it's not in my voice now, and I've got more to get into.
Yeah.
I don't know what's gonna happen.
There's
But
layers to this.
there are, and it's just I don't know. It can have a happy ending. Like my story never had a happy ending. It didn't. And that's just not good enough for me.
I think you
I
made
need
your
to-
happy ending. You found a
Yeah, and I'm
husband, a
continuing.
partner that you
Uh-huh.
love, that you can have a
I do.
healthy relationship with, an honest, healthy relationship. I mean,
Yep.
I don't think people realize, like, I don't think you probably give yourself that much credit. It takes a lot of work to go and make a relationship with someone with our background, with somebody else
Yeah.
that doesn't have that background or the understanding, and you
Yeah.
could explain it in a way that they were not scared off.
Oh, I
Like,
scared him. I scared him. I've
I
had
mean,
horror. I mean,
they're still
I know.
there.
We've been together a very long time now, and I think we've come to a better place, but healthy is always something we continue, I think, to like evolve into more and more and more. It's interesting because marriage is such a long game
Hmm.
that people change and people grow and people go through things. And um again, I think now I'm also learning what an honor it is to give my partner that space to be who
Hmm.
he is,
I
because I think earlier when we have fear and anxiety and abandonment issues and attachment
know.
issues and mental health issues, it can just be hard. It can just be hard. And so I think you're right that creating a relationship is so hard, and coming from things that we came from is so hard. And I know it's something I've been working at for a really long time. Um, never, I don't know, perfect. I've long gotten rid of that disillusion. Um, but yeah, thank you. I feel like you see me.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot of work. I mean, I've been with my husband like 20 years now.
Yeah, we're going
And
on 18.
oh, that's awesome. And it is a
So
journey.
soon.
You meet when you're young, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, if you're a Scientologist that lived in both worlds, you can probably turn it off and on. You know,
Yeah.
like if you're around
Yeah.
regular people, you're regular and you don't bring up Scientology really because you don't
Right.
want to give them something to talk about or to attack or whatever. And it's just
Got to catfish them into thinking you're normal. Then you
exactly.
pop out their baby and then you can let it
Then-
all out.
Then you show the colors like, honey, I'm just nuts. I'm sorry you didn't know this.
But honestly, I think things came up when I became a parent that I hadn't dealt
You
with.
didn't
and that
realize.
I didn't know. Yeah. And then, you know, my kid turned 8
Mhm.
and another set came up, or I lost my family and another set came up.
Yeah.
And I would definitely wouldn't say that we've had an easy route, but I will say that when we get off this live, I will happily walk into his arms in our shared home and have a great rest of our Saturday. So I don't know what else I could ask for.
And that's what's important is that you have stability. You've made the home that we didn't have, right? We have created our home, our structure for our kids to have better.
Yeah.
I mean, me and my husband always talk about this. We're doing better than our parents did, not necessarily because they meant anything bad, but we're just trying to do better than they did, right? We're trying to learn from their mistakes. And if there's some things that were good, okay, cool, let's honor that. Like our parents did some stuff that was great.
Yeah.
Everything's not black and white, you know?
Totally.
They
Exactly.
did some really, really good stuff. And we want to honor that and put our own stuff into the things that weren't great. And we hope that when our kids, if they choose to have kids and settle down and do that bit of life, we can't wait to see what that's like. I'm such a weirdo. As soon as I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, literally the first thing I said was, oh my gosh, that means I can have grandkids. And the lady was like, honey, you got to get this one out first. You're like looking like 5.5, 6 weeks along. And I was like, yeah. But that means that if I have a kid, they can have kids. And I just don't know why I couldn't wait to be a grandparent. I think in a weird way, my grandparents were like such big parts of my life.
Oh yeah.
We never lived close ever. Like we were in states away, but I would write letters to them all the time when I was lonely and depressed. And I would never write like bad stuff, but I would write to them because that was like who I would envision running away to.
Yeah. And you want to be that for somebody else. I mean, I guess that sounds weird, but yeah, I know what you mean. You want to be the love.
Need that.
Yes, of course. The presence of
need
love.
to run away. I mean,
you know what's really interesting, and I actually, it's funny that you brought that up because it's literally the first thing I wrote on this new book, Confessions of an Ex-Scientologist Mom. Your eggs of your grandbabies are inside your daughter, inside you. Right? So by the time you give birth to that daughter, all the eggs that she's ever going to have are in her body. So you actually did carry your own grandbaby in a weird way. See, I don't have daughters, so I can't claim that.
That's true. It's true.
That same thing, right? Because you know how the male thing goes. Like they're so they're not just sticking around eggs in there. So anyway, I thought it's fascinating. I think it's so
cool.
Maybe we're connecting with that grandma vibe really early.
Maybe I was. Maybe I was like, instead of past lives, let's do future lives. Let's do something different.
Focus on the other. It's like Benjamin buttoning the whole situation.
Let's just like do a little remix to this, okay? Right. Do a remix to the badness, okay? It'll be a little chaotic, a little feral, but let's do it.
I'm imagining you, and you're just like, I'm not like regular grandmas. I'm a cool grandma.
Ex-culty grandma. I won't be making them take a bunch of a handful of pills. Do you remember doing that?
Oh my gosh.
Why did they think that was going to be good? Like, why was that a thing? Who thought that was a good idea to shove that many pills down kids?
Yeah, and by pills I mean vitamins, right?
Like big, it was all vitamins and
supplements. Well, I don't really know. Part of me goes back and forth because I know there's a lot of MLMs that are associated with nutrition items, and Scientologists love that. They just love the alternative medicine. And I think L. Ron Hubbard really did write some books early on while he said he was a doctor. Let's not forget that a lot of those early books that he wrote, he said he was a doctor, and he wrote all about radiation. And I think there's a lot of stuff in there about vitamins. So people just think he's an expert in everything. And so they're trying to follow his stuff. But yeah, what did you take? I would take the whole gambit. I never got a chewy fruit. I never got a chewy Flintstone vitamin. Never.
No.
I got
the big yellow,
that's the vitamin D complex. Turns your pee bright.
All like a handful. You want to hear a fun story that's not fun?
Yeah.
when I was maybe somewhere between 4 and 7, a family member visited us, and they saw my mom giving us kids all these handful of pills, and they were like they were like, right, and they were like, it stuck with them because recently, within the last 2 years, like a year ago, 2 years ago, I chatted with them after my mom passed away, and that person had said, I remember seeing your mom give you like this handful of pills, and it really was like weird. And I never forgot it. Like I thought you guys needed food and snacks and like goldfish and whatever. But instead you were getting like this handful of pills of like medicine and stuff. And she said, I did like in college, I did a lot of my, she did a course on philosophy and stuff. And all of her stuff that she did was on Scientology, because of just seeing that one thing. And I was like, wow. And I would have never known that had I not, happened to talk to her 20 some years later, 25 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, wow, what a weird, impactful thing that you remember that. And I had no clue that you even saw that, or like that it was like raising red flags, but it's interesting because this is, again, that was something that happened so long ago, but no one could say anything. So
yeah, what are you supposed to do? Be like, I'm not going to take these? Like, no, you're taking them. And you're taking them tomorrow, and you're taking them the next day, and you're taking them until you're done taking them.
I used to go in the bathroom, pretend I had to go to the bathroom, and spit them all out and flush them down the toilet.
Oh my gosh. Not me. I could never even get in and back up. But I mean, I was swallowing I don't know about you, but we're talking 8 to 10 pills at a time.
It was a lot. Yeah.
As like a 7 and 8-year-old child.
It was not good. I would always just sit there and like make myself throw up. And I was like, I've got a bad gag reflex. And I would always just, and so I was not good for that. So it's funny.
Particular type of trauma when somebody's telling you to put something in or on your body that you're like really against. Yeah, that's such an assault of, I don't know. It's just so messed up, because once it's in your body, it's like, it's in there, and then it's a supplement. So it's like becoming a part of you, and you just like don't want it.
It's a daily routine.
Yeah.
And you think of how much money our parents wasted on that. Like those are expensive.
Yeah. Plus, I think that there's probably some, I don't know. There's some vitamins you really shouldn't be taking a lot of. So, and a lot of it was based on like chiropractor. I mean, our doctor, like I don't really remember going to the doctor very much, but I remember going to chiropractor all the time. So there is this like mistrust of the general medical, but they like know what to do. They're like, we know what we're doing. We're fine. Thank you.
Yeah. It's this arrogance. It's so true. It's sadly more true than most people would like to think. Like my mom, before she passed, she finally was old enough to get the free healthcare insurance when you're a senior.
Yeah.
And so she had to go to a regular doctor. Mm-hmm. She wasn't happy about it, but they just assign you one.
Yeah.
So a random person that you don't get to pick. And she wanted to have her chiropractor, but you have to be referred by your regular doctor. So that's the only reason she was going. And the first thing they did, because they have to do a physical, like one of the first things, like they're doing the physical and all that. And the doctor's like, it looks like you have like possible breast cancer. And she's like, no, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. Guess who died 2 years later?
Mm-hmm.
The person that never got diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And she never went back to that doctor because she was so mad. And the doctor even wrote in her notes, I will not see this patient again, because she threw such a fit. And if people think that that's not a thing, I have handwritten letters that my mom wrote that said, due to my extreme religious beliefs, like why she wouldn't do healthcare, like why she wouldn't do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, cancer is one of those things that they don't really believe in doing treatment for.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, I forget where I saw it, but I did see somewhere that like cancer, a policy letter or something written that said cancer comes from an upset on the 2D, an ARC break on the 2D, which basically is saying that you have like a broken relationship in your family or your loved ones. Like we'll put it in those simple terms, which I don't even not prescribe to. I don't know what the right word is there. Subscribe to.
It could be. It's just not verified. Like you can't say yes or no either way.
Right. I think secrets and lies and heartbreak stresses our body out. Absolutely.
Yeah. And stress is not good on our body.
Of course. So there's some weird like correlation there, but the direct causation is certainly not proven. But when you offer a causation, and I don't want to put words in your mom's mouth, but it sounds like she really was not wanting to explore the diagnosis she received in the medical route. It kind of gives them another path, like, oh, if I fix my spirit, it will fix this. And I know some people choose not even to work on the body aspect, even if they are going to pass away, because they think, well, I'm going to pick up another body that will be healthier, and I'll just get my spirit right before I pass away. And that's everybody's right to practice their own religion and have, when it comes my time to pass and I know it's coming, who knows what I'll do. I understand that. I respect that. But you just can't make false promises to people that you'll heal them. That's not okay. And then
that's
take their
criminal.
money.
And that's criminal, to be honest. You're literally allowing people to not get medical treatment, or encouraging them, I should say.
Well, by telling them, if it's, allegedly, but by telling somebody that you have an alternative solution to their problem and giving them that hope to put their energy and time and money into a different path. And nobody has the right answer for cancer. I mean, people pass away, and we do the best that we can with the technology we have. So I'm not trying to find blame. All I'm trying to say is that it sucks when someone is diverted down a path that is not going to have their medical answers, and they believe that it will. That's very sad.
Yeah.
Very
She never got it diagnosed, so she technically died from like a brain tumor. But in my mind, I know, like in my mind, I feel like that's exactly what it was. Is that she never got it diagnosed or treated. Therefore, from what I read, and I'm not a medical doctor, breast cancer usually metastasizes and moves to your brain, which makes sense that she randomly had tumors after that, kind of pop up. You can't not take care of your health. I mean, that's why we're here.
Yep.
That's why we're here, to be the voice of the people that did not make it, that had beliefs that overrid everything else in their life. Because there's a lot of people that fall into that category, and it's sad.
Yeah. And if you do want to think differently than what your group is telling you you need to think or you need to do, you have a right to explore your own desires and inclinations.
Right. Because free will is a beautiful thing, and we all have it.
Exactly.
I mean, unless maybe you're like in the Sea Org or whatever, then you can't have it. But But okay, exactly. we got a comment from Kelly Copter. 200 lawsuits were made against the Cult Awareness Network. They went bankrupt, and Scientology bought it. If that's not cult behavior, I don't know what it is. I agree.
And I believe it was a similar tactic. There were like 80 or maybe more than that lawsuits against the IRS at the time. That they were trying to get the tax exempt, basically saying, we'll lift all these lawsuits if you just
leave us alone, and we'll stop suing you.
We'll leave you alone. Right.
It's very blackmail-y.
It's extortion-y. It's blackmail.
It's a lot. It's a lot of not ethical, not moral, not a very good thing, I would say. Okay, I'm gonna read another little bit, because I was gonna read this earlier, but we were chatting and such good stuff. But this is something I want for us to touch on, because it's super important. Okay. I'd like to see the children's security checks declared illegal. A child of that age cannot truly consent to this type of interrogation, as they are not developmentally capable of grasping the full context. It'll fuck a kid up. I'm living proof of that. I love that we can honestly say, hey, Liz, we're not good, even though it happened, and we're here, but it's not good. And Scientology websites, they do promote like these young kids with their success stories, and like, look at my win and look at my auditing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they should be in a playground. They should be using their imagination and coloring, making a fort, and, having toys and building and whatever. Like they should be learning about life, but not into that depth,
Yeah, because by the time you submit to anything like that, you basically are agreeing with all of what they've presented as the way that things work. I don't know. Yeah.
And it's breaking a child's everything. Their love, their excitement for life, the zest that they should have naturally. So.
Yeah. I would very much like to see the security. And the security check, for anybody who doesn't know, is when you sit one-on-one with somebody for hours and hours, probably weeks on end, and you are asking them very introspective questions about things that they have thought or done, typically negative things. Like in the children's security check, which is 99 questions and is for children aged 6 to 12 has questions like, have you ever kept anything? I'm going to paraphrase some of these. I might get a word or two that's off, but like, do you have any secrets from your parents? Is there anything people have asked you not to tell? Have you ever had a bad thought about your parents? Have you ever stolen anything? Have you ever said anything bad about anybody? Have you ever pretended to be sick when you weren't? Have you ever tried to get out of chores when you lied to get out of chores? Things like that. 99 questions. And I would argue that the typical path of development for any human being includes a lot of trial and error. Children try things out all the time. They try out behaviors, and it doesn't necessarily mean that's who they are. So anyway, long story short, how can a child consent to that?
They can't.
I don't understand. I mean, as an adult, you would have to have informed consent even. And they're not even having informed consent. They're just like, get in this room, hold these cans, and you're going to tell me all your secrets. What was that thought? What was that thought? Go earlier. What was that thought? Oh, that must have been a past life. Okay, now we're moving on to question number 2. And it can take hours and hours and weeks. How is that okay? Somebody debate me on this. Like, show me one Scientologist who is willing to stand up here and debate this with me, because I would really love that opportunity.
Yeah, it's not age appropriate. It really is not. And it's really not okay. I mean,
yeah, and the
harmful.
meter is used as a form of gaslighting in a way, because it's like, you don't even have to say anything. There's like, well, what'd you think?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you're experiencing. The needle is moving, and that means something more than what you're saying, and it knows more than what you think about your own mind. And then you lose that control, you lose that autonomy. And then by the time you are a fully formed adult, you didn't even know that you were supposed to have autonomy in the first place. So then
At
you were just
all.
a controllable little person.
Yeah. Isn't that horrible? They don't even, it's like
Yeah.
they don't even have a chance. And it's true.
Yeah. So I think if an adult wants to consent to that, personally, I don't think 18-year-olds really can even grasp that either. We're talking some pretty
their brain
esoteric.
is still developing.
From everything I understand, the brain is developing till you're 25. But whatever, 18 is a legal age. I'd prefer that it was pushed to 21.
21 even, yeah.
I mean, something reasonable. But yeah, I would like to understand a world that exists that people are saying that's okay still, because it's still happening. And here's the worst part about it, which Alicia, is if your child has a developmental delay, has a physical, anything that's just sort of not the typical standard really of the 50s. So anything neurodivergent, any type of special need. And then of course now L. Ron Hubbard says that they know how to do all the learning stuff. So if you have any type of learning disability or any type of even just delay, which could be doesn't matter if it's nature versus nurture, what's happening, all those things basically lead your child down the path of more confession. So it's like you're getting punished in a way. It could even be something like your own parent drank alcohol and you got fetal alcohol syndrome. And now you're, as a child, going to get repetitively security checked because what'd you do to bring that into yourself? I feel pretty passionately about that.
Yeah, I know. And I think it needs to be talked about more because it's so prevalent. And us now growing up in this and then now becoming moms, I think it's the biggest mirror just to look, you have to look, for me, I feel like I have to look at this stuff. I can't choose not to, because it's now I'm here and I'm like, why would you ever, why would that be? Who thought this was okay? I mean, I get people have the best intentions, but some of these things I'm just like, come on guys, common sense should have prevailed a little bit.
Common sense. Yeah. And then now really, quite frankly, I think if common sense isn't going to work, then we need some social policies.
Yeah,
we need
legalities.
some social policies in place. And the thing about security checking is either you're doing it to your own child, which did happen to me when I was younger, or you're literally putting them in with most likely a stranger that has been assigned by the Church of Scientology. And I don't know if you're paying attention in the Danny Masterson trial, everybody, but I wouldn't trust them with the well-being of your child in a closed room and trust that the outcome is going to be that whatever they say is going to be kept confidential. Whatever they say is going to be treated appropriately.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think
Anything
it's
they
interesting.
can and will be used against you later if and when they need to control you, manipulate you, gaslight
Exactly.
you, whatever.
And that's such a vulnerable moment, right? When you're told you're in a spiritual counseling session or any type of counseling, when you say, like, I was hurt. And that's a vulnerable moment as to how that person reacts, which is why in the mental health field, people go and get degrees and they get licenses and they have huge think tanks putting together for best practice to try and make sure that the patients are taken care of. Because if you tell a person when they finally are brave enough to tell you what happened to them, that it was their fault,
Mm.
you're really just like furthering the abuse. You might as well just put salt in their wound. And then they're like, well, I wouldn't be having salt in my wound if I never said anything. And
Yeah.
then
That's actually the best way to put it, because I think that's what most of us as kids growing up, if something bad happened, I think once you say something and you see that it's you are the problem. I mean, for me anyway, once I was like, oh, it's just going to be flipped on me. Whenever anything else happened, I would never say anything to my parents.
Yeah, I
would
mean,
keep it to myself, and I would try to
right.
figure it out myself, and isolate, because I didn't want them to see and know, because then it's like it's some whole thing that they're gonna have to try to figure out. And I wasn't gonna go and do auditing and all that. And thankfully I couldn't get that pushed on me, because I would vocally say I don't want it, right? And keeping Scientology working says you can't have someone be there if they don't want to be there. So that got me out of a lot of stuff.
Right.
Thank goodness.
But you got to take what comes with that. It's like, okay, well, at least I'm not in session. I might be shoveling horse manure, or in my case, put on mess work, where you're cleaning up after 300 people who just ate a meal and doing their dishes. But that's better than some things.
Isn't that so sad? This is our better than moments. Like, you kind of have a trade-off there,
Yeah. And that is the thing, right? Even to this day, as adults, or people under the radar, out of the radar, whatever you want to, we're all sort of assessing that risk, right? Like, how much is it going to hurt if I tell my truth? How much, what's going to happen? And that's the human condition. Like, we all face that, whether we've been in Scientology or not.
Yeah.
But some things that were happening with me were it was just more painful to let it keep happening.
I agree with you. I just was like, enough is enough. And the people that I was being quiet for passed away. So I was like, fuck it. What do I have to lose? I mean, the rest of my family, but like, if it's that conditional, then what was it anyway?
Yeah. Well, and I would have never written this book if my ranch wasn't sold. And I mean, I would have towed the line a lot more. But by the time I got the opportunity to speak, a lot of that had already been chosen and done. And I was like, fine, I'm going out with a bang.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, you chose this, and now that I have nothing else to lose, I will just be saying my piece.
Yeah, and again, there's a luxury in that. I don't know how to explain it, because I cried and cried and cried and cried and died inside so many times. Yet now I really can just come on YouTube and I can say whatever I want. I mean, you guys might not like me and you might unfollow me and I might get demonetized, but for the most part, I can just be who I want to be.
Yeah. There's beauty in that, and owning who we are and not apologizing for it.
Yeah, there is.
Not covering it up or pretending. That's why we always make jokes and we laugh about stuff, because we realize it's so obscure and so.
It's like absurd. There's an absurdity to it.
It's just like bonkers. It's out of this world, but we are here, and that is already, like we've said, like the fact that we're here is already such a big deal.
Yeah. And I laugh a lot in my book, and I poke a lot of fun in my book. And I think that is a testament to how far I've come. So if you are going to get my book, don't feel like it's going to be
it's not so heavy that you can't read.
Yeah.
It's not that heavy. It's heavy, but it's well broken up.
I'm like, don't get scared. It's going to be okay. Because we can laugh about it. I mean, I can laugh about it now. I went through way too much to not be happy about where I am and to laugh about it.
Right. And I always have said that I have been sad for long enough and depressed for long enough with my life that I am finding and making my own joy. If that bothers you, then you can just leave.
Yeah.
I don't want
change the channel. Yeah, exactly.
Then just leave. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to not have some happiness and make it when I can.
Yeah,
so I'm going to read this comment. Telling these stories helps us learn from others' examples of how life works.
Thank you.
Thanks, girls. That's very sweet. And thank you so much for being here. We so appreciate everybody
So grateful
listening
for
to
you.
this wildness. Like, what is life? I mean, really, what is life? Okay, I want to read maybe, I know it's like we're going on the 2-hour mark. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Because I was going to read one last thing, but it's kind of a big
Read one
one.
more.
Okay, it's kind of a big one.
Okay.
But I think it's a good one. Okay, now that I'm an adult, a mother myself, I see things differently. I see my own self-worth diminishing as I continue to put weight in my mother's religious view of me. I see my relationship with my husband reflecting the mounting anxiety I felt as I realize that I can no longer live under the radar. I see my own fear of my mother's ultimate rejection of me affecting my relationship with my own children. I must take a stand. I will no longer be held responsible for my mother's ability to do Scientology by having a suppressive family member. I will not accept the threat of disconnection or disinheritance if I speak out against the church or its practices, and I won't allow the chance that my children will be exposed to, coerced by, or fooled into believing Scientology is the answer to humanity's problems. And then I'm going to skip one sentence, and then I have come to the conclusion that the practices of the Church of Scientology and its fundamental belief system are corrupt in their very core. L. Ron Hubbard did not have answers to personal relationships, how to solve drugs, crime, or war. He did learn a lot about hypnotism and mind control, which I believe he used to make money from unsuspecting followers. And lastly, I firmly believe that practicing security checks, interrogation, hard labor, and separation from family on young children creates unhappy children. I should know. For a long time, I was one of them. My brother committed unaliving at 19, so I'd go so far to say he was one too. So today, I say goodbye to anxiety, the fear, the threat of losing my family, because I have a true family that I will never abandon, and I will never choose religion or dogma over. What I have given up today is a mother who has learned how to love from the Church of Scientology, a type of love that can be taken away at any moment, a type of love that is contingent upon keeping quiet about Scientology's abuses. I thought that was really beautiful. So
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually part of an essay I wrote long before this book that I put in there. That was I wrote that about 6 months, maybe 3 months. I don't even know. Very shortly after my mother and I finally ended our relationship. And it was my way of processing and, expressing what had happened. That was the first time I ever publicly said anything about Scientology ever, was in that essay. And I took a stand, because do you remember how many times you had to take a stand in Scientology? Like, if you got in trouble, maybe you do doubt formula or liability, and you always had to like prove what group you wanted to be a part of and like make your intentions known and be like, I'm a Scientologist. And I was just like,
I'm not
I
going
got
to do it anymore.
I got to do the opposite of that. Plus, I wrote about this a little bit in the book. My parents really are true believers, my stepfather and my mother, and they really wanted to access Scientology. They're getting older, they're experiencing things in their life, and their solace, their comfort, their joy, or whatever you want to call it, was wrapped up in Scientology. And my existing was putting that at risk for them.
Yeah.
Like, they couldn't do their eternity. They couldn't have their salvation because I had an idea that the way that I was raised and my brother was raised, and that security checks are wrong. And so I had to let that go. And that essay was a big part of me, like, finding my freedom and saying, like, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
My family also covered up some essay and used Scientology to cover up the essay. And it was not too long after that where I was like, I'm not going to play this game anymore.
Yeah.
And thank you for reading that, because honestly, I wrote that so long ago, and I did put it in the book and I've like looked over it, but like hearing somebody read it to me almost just like remotivates me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so encompassing of so many things. And it's just like, no, we are mothers, we're adults, and we're not going to always get it right, but we're absolutely sure in our core that is not okay for us. Right? And that's not going to be around our kids, and we're not going to subject them to that at all in any way, shape, or form.
Yes. Yes, and that was my hard line,
Yeah.
and I
Same as
stand
me.
by it, and I stand by it to this day.
Damn right. Damn right. I hope
Yeah.
everybody enjoyed this and has got their copy. It's been
Please
such a
do.
fun chat and such a good book. And
Thank
it is
you.
not even like, and there's a quiz in the back too, guys. So
I love my Liz's quizzes.
I do too. I thought that
There's
was
a
like,
typo in there too, if you find it. It's fine.
oh,
I'll
well,
get
I'm gonna-
around to someday a batch of you will get it without that particular typo. I'm always proud when people say it because I'm like, oh, you read it to the end. Good
you
job.
read it till the very end. Yeah, I have not seen it, so that is very interesting. Well, good job for those who did.
Yeah,
You guys are smarty pants. So again, pick up your copy.
please do.
Confessions of an Ex-Scientologist Pothead by Liz Gale. Third generation Scientologist who has chosen to break the cycle and not have her family be indoctrinated and live a lie, or, live under the radar, or whatever it is. I appreciate you speaking out. I appreciate your insight. It's helped me already, like so much, just to help to clarify and understand some stuff. And it's good. I think the more voices and the more people that are sharing their stories, I think it's going to help other people, even if they're not going to come out loudly. And that's okay too.
That's fine.
If you don't want to be loud about it, it's okay. If all you do is listen, I can't even begin to say how important it is to have people that have been through something speak about it so that other people can understand and hear that they're not alone.
Yeah.
My mom used to sneak to the public library and get on a computer to access YouTube and to try to get little snippets of Leah Remini's series because she really wanted to watch it when it was out, but she couldn't at her home.
Wow.
So I know that it's super important. Like, I personally know it's super important. So
Yeah.
we're just happy to be here. Thank you all for being with us. We so
Bye.
appreciate you.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys soon, okay? Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
You girls watch out for those DBs.
We are the DBs, mister.